people working, that's 10,000 computing hours crammed in 1 hour, right? Which is, you could get, that sort of system launched or get your workers organized within a few minutes rather than building out a cluster that runs 1,000 servers. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to software or specifically any sort of detection, all of that already been invented. What hasn't been invented is ability to organize spare CPU cycles from the people who are currently mining for cryptocurrency. And again, I'm not saying that you can only be a worker if you're mining. You can be a worker if you essentially decide to visit imagizer.com and sign up to be a worker. We'll give you a piece of software that you will run in the background on your laptop that will essentially wait for tasks. And you can actually manage how many CPU cores or memory or time you want to rent out to a potential client.
Mm-hmm. So right now what you're saying is I could go, for example, to imagizer.com and I can sign up for that. I download that piece of software. I can configure it to say, don't use any more than this amount of computational power. And from there, the computer, whenever it's active or the CPU cycles are available, can receive those requests. And as it receives those requests, it processes it and then sends it back through your engine to the requester, to the client that's asking for that work to be done. Is that right?
Yes, that's exactly right. And that's how it's going to work when we launch. So the blockchain layer facilitates the transactions between the requester and the worker. Mm-hmm. There's also a verification layer. Like, for example, you can have workers that may potentially have bad hardware, and so they don't return the proper results. In this case, we would be using a consensus swarm algorithms where some workers will be acting as QA verifiers, and some workers will simply be doing the work. And once you reach positive consensus that this work is actually accurate, you can send it back to the client, and the client will essentially flag it as the task complete, and all of the workers get paid.
Mm-hmm. Walk me through how you first...
So it's not dissimilar to Airbnb.
Yeah.
With Airbnb, you have some space that you can rent out for people to live for a certain period of time. Here, if you have spare CPU capacity, you can totally rent it out by connecting to our blockchain network and becoming a peer and a worker that can receive and do tasks. Now, when I said face detection, this is only one example. You can do other things, like, for example, run OCR, where you can say, here's 100 million PDF documents. We really want to transcribe them in text. So how do you do it? You would run something like an OCR that is also a neural network that will read and understand the words and place words in the text files, and those text files will be returned back to the requester. The other potential task could be that if you have very high resolution images and you want to, all of those images are, let's say, they're either TIFF or PNG or JPEG, but you really want them to be WebP, so the latest Google format for web images. You could technically run a task to convert between formats for your complete image library. So you would potentially pay only $100 and get your task done in 1 hour. Mm-hmm. No engineering resources required.
So walk me through how that works on that client's perspective. I understand how it works on the individual, like if I wanted to sign up and make money off of that and be able to help in that capacity. How does it work on the client's perspective? How do I go if I'm XYZ customer and I have those like a billion images that I want to have some work done against it? How does that work? How does Imagizer fit into that?
Okay, so what you would do is you would go to our portal, imagizer.com. You would publish your task for consumption or for work available. And there you can basically say, I have that many units. This is what I want to do with them. And we can literally publish what's possible. Like, for example, WebP conversion could be one task. Face detection could be another task. Image tagging can be yet another task. So you publish your, essentially source of where your data is, which could be Amazon S3, for example. So all of your images are sitting there, they're waiting to be processed. And what our system will do is it will take your task and wrap it into a JSON container, or kind of like a work description, be broadcast across our blockchain to all of the available workers. If workers agree that they want to do this particular task, where the reward is high enough, like let's say that I want to be paid $10 an hour, or $5 an hour, $1 an hour. You as a worker can configure your client side to only be connected to jobs that pay that much. Like if somebody pays 50 cents an hour, you can say, I will reject those jobs. I will not even hear them. So once this sort of negotiation completes, you become, as a worker, you can become part of the peer-to-peer network, part of the swarm, receive your task, get your task done, get paid for it.
Mm-hmm. One of the things. Sorry, go ahead.
And essentially, it's up to a client or a requester to put up the kind of like the final dollar in totality, and they wouldn't necessarily even know how their funds are going to be distributed, because you can have 100 workers working on your task, or you may have 10,000 workers working on your task. So our system will handle the funds disbursement and payments in a safe manner through the blockchain.
So one of the things that really impressed me the most with Imagizer in the first episode was the fact that you didn't have to manage any infrastructure at all. All you had to do was focus on the software component of it, because then a customer of yours who lived on AWS would just spin up an image with your software baked into it and just pay for the fee of the instance and that image, and then you would take a cut out of that. So you never had to deal with any of the infrastructure. Is that still the case? Is that still how it works? Or do you now have to add some infrastructure in order to manage that transaction?
Are you talking about specifically blockchain related stuff, or image as it is now?
Both.
Okay, so our philosophy always was that we really wanted to reduce any sort of friction between the clients and the service. So imagizer.com is extremely simple in terms of how you can configure it and how you can pay for it. So in other words, we don't lock you into a contract of any kind. There's no really sales process besides a POC, and a POC is just being a proof of concept where we give you a bunch of credits that you can run on imagizer.com. So it's not dissimilar to AWS billing model, where you pay as you go, and that reduces the fact that there's really no any sort of commitment or lock-in on the client side when using Imagizer. When it comes to actual image manipulation, Imagizer was designed to remove the back-end engineering and replace it essentially with a software that does one thing and one thing really well. Mm-hmm. So really you just basically take the tasks of image manipulation and give controls to the UI and UX teams so that you can develop your CSS, JavaScript, HTML, and manipulate your backend image library layer on how you see fit for your product. When it comes to blockchain, yes, blockchain is a big buzzword today, but in reality what it is and what we see it as is we see it as a computer peer-to-peer network that can be essentially used to connect requesters and workers. And that also makes it very simple.
I think your lights just went out.
Yeah, let me get the light back on.
All right.
Okay, there we go.
There we go.
Yeah, I've been sitting very quietly and now moving. That's when that happens.
It always looked like there was some color inversion there. I'm like, is he messing with the color settings, or that looked pretty creepy. So going back to the infrastructure and the simplicity, I know that was a very intentional decision on your part to keep it that simple, whereas some of the other image processing providers have that infrastructure they have to manage, and it's a different kind of offering and model. But the reason that I bring that back up is because, like I just said, That was a very intentional decision on your part.